Okay, we're good to go.
Hello and welcome to the Wednesday Mega Group. My name is Linda Sylvester and I will be your host for the Mega Group. Our group today is scheduled from 3 to 4:30 p.m. But before we begin, let's go over some information about the webinar. So, this orientation group will operate in webinar format. Attendees will not be able to turn on their video or microphone during mega groups. You were counted in attendance as soon as you logged in. You do not need to follow up with us regarding attendance. And if you lose connection, try to rejoin the webinar as soon as possible. You will still receive your incentive even if you get disconnected from the webinar. Okay, let's begin. We have a very exciting group ahead of us, but before we get into everything, let's go over today's goals. Today's session breakdown. So first, we'll start off with our opening ritual. Then we'll go into program announcements, incentive cards, and activation codes. We'll have Friends of TAP with Emora Blakely, the founder and director of Black Girls Talk. We'll have a showcase of the work from your small groups. We'll have an animation industry guest speaker, Hassan Samir, senior VFX artist, and then we'll have our closing ritual. And now it's time to introduce my co-host for our mega groups, Lisa Clementi, a lead dance art and movement therapist.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. I'm always so excited to be here co-hosting with you on our Wednesdays. So welcome everyone, welcome back. We're gonna jump into our opening ritual, which is another fun poll here. So we're curious to hear from each of you. What is one of your favorite film genres? So there's so many out there. So we have this cool little poll here. So in your chat, you're gonna see a link. So you could click on that link and you'll be able to enter a response. And of course, there's so many film genres out there. We couldn't fit them all in, but there are quite a few. So have fun choosing which one you're more drawn to. And we're going to see this happen in live time. So we're going to see the magic. Super excited to see what what is going to be maybe the most popular film genre amongst our whole group here today.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
And like I said, there's a lot to choose from. So we've only listed a few here, although it is quite a bit we've got listed. Oh my gosh, already.
Wow. It looks like he's number one.
Yeah, comedy is definitely, although it looks like horrors could be a close tie here. We don't know. We're still seeing these bars move up and down. We've got sci-fi, fantasy, adventure, action, drama, horror, comedy, romance, mystery, musicals. I don't know, Lyndon, what would be the one you would choose out of these listed here?
Well, I think that I would probably choose horror. That's one of yeah.
Oh, that I don't know if I'm in the mood to be scared, but I think one of mine would be sci-fi. Although there are some spooky parts of sci-fi.
Yeah.
Seems like horror and comedy is still holding the
They're going at it. Looks like action is like right behind horror.
That's true. Least favorite amongst the group today looks like a musical.
Oh, no love for musical. I mean, musicals are fun.
Yeah, they definitely can be for sure. Well, looks like this group has landed on comedy. It was the most favored for today. So really cool to see that happening. Thank you guys. So cool. So we're going to jump into some program announcements before we get into our exciting webinar today. So let's see. So if you have received your incentive card, keep it in a safe place. And if you have not yet received your incentive card, no worries, you will receive it by March 17th. And your cards will not be loaded with funds until March 17th. So just to kind of look at these dates here, and you will receive an email with the activation code for your card by Tuesday, March 9th, or I should say on Tuesday, March 9th. And there's no need to email us in the meantime. They are coming.
Yes, they are. And now it's time for activation codes. So important. This code is not your social security number. Oh, that looks a little blurry. Can't really read it.
Oh, I got you, Lyndon. If for some reason it's not coming in clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, very important to note, this code is not your social security number or any number related to your social security number. This is going to be a randomly generated 4-digit code. However, when you go online to activate your card, you will put the activation code you receive via email in the box for social security number. We know it's a bit confusing, but we promise it will work.
Thanks for that, Lisa.
No problem, Lyndon. All right. So you might still be asking yourself, well, what if I missed an orientation? What if I missed one of my small groups? I still have incentive questions. So if you still have these questions, our best resource is our website, www.theanimationproject.org. And in the chat now, you'll see a link which directs you to our FAQ page on our website. And hopefully you'll find immediate answers to your questions.
And now who to contact. So for incentives, you will contact incentives at theanimationproject.org. For schedule and attendance, you will contact program 1 at theanimationproject.org. And to make up a session, you will contact program 1 at theanimationproject.org.
All right. Now we are super excited to introduce a new series called Friends of TAP, where we will be welcoming guests who have programming in our very own community that might be of interest to some of you. So for today, this is our first ever Friends of TAP guest, and that is Imora Blakeney, founder and director of Black Girls Talk. Welcome, Imora.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to share about Black Girls Talk and the work that I do. My name is Imora Blakeney, and I am the founder and director of Black Girls Talk. A little bit about me, I'm from Harlem. If you're from Harlem, put it in the chat. And I'm a junior at Bard High School Early College, Queens. Yeah, I'm so excited just to share more about the organization. So Black Girls Talk is a student-led organization at Bard High School Early College, Queens, created to provide a safe space for the Black female students, staff, and faculty on campus. We focus on building sisterhood, professional development, and financial literacy through workshops, small group discussions, and bonding activities. And it's really important to us that we engage in conversations that aren't being held in the classroom, such as Black women in STEM, representation in the media, colorism, and other topics that relate to being a young Black woman in today's society. So a little bit more about like why and how Black Girls Talk got started. There's so many things that went into it. So as mentioned before, I am from Harlem. And so my elementary school was in my neighborhood. So most of my classmates and teachers were Black or Latinx. But when I went to my middle school on the Upper West Side, it was definitely a culture shock for me. I was one of 5 Black girls in my grade. I was in a different neighborhood, and I was surrounded by people who were coming from a different racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic background than I was. So I definitely had to learn how to adapt to spaces like this early on. When I arrived at my high school, there was a woman named Karima. She's actually the advisor of Black Girls Talk. Her office was one of these safe spaces for me. I always went into her office to talk about anything that was going on in my life, whatever was going on in the school, in the media. And there was this one incident that happened at school where my friend was in class, and there was a girl behind her who was touching her hair and said that she wondered how it would feel to cut her hair off. So not only was I upset, my friend was upset. I went to Karima, I shared the incident with her, and that's when she mentioned something called sister circles. And Sister Circles is a safe space for Black women that provides emotional support, and it's also a space to share stories and experiences. And so I'll talk a little bit more about Sister Circles and how it can be utilized. But that's when I first learned about Sister Circles, and I went home and started thinking about what I could do to just create a safe space for my classmates on campus, and to have a space where we can share about incidents like this. The next day I came back and I was like, you know what? I want to start Black Girls Talk. And I went and got signatures, and on to the right is actually a picture after our very first meeting. And so not only was Black Girls Talk inspired by this incident that happened to my friend, but I also just wanted to create the sense of community that I felt in my elementary school as well. And so we could turn to the next slide, and I'll share a little bit more about Sister Circles. Yeah. So I don't know if the slides are working, but I'll just go, I'll go ahead and share. So one, as mentioned before, Sister Circles is a space for Black women to just share stories and experiences that's happening to them, both in the workplace, at school, just in society in general. It's also a space for emotional and spiritual support, right? Having a space where others are there for you and supporting you. It's also a space just to have allies, a space where you can have validation and affirmation from others who have shared experiences with you. Okay, there we go. We have the slides. It's also a space for networking, right? Meeting and connecting with other Black women. Self-definition, defining your identity as a Black woman. One thing that I love about Black Girls Talk is that though we all identify the same racially, we are all coming from different ethnic backgrounds. We have young women from Nigeria, from Haiti, Jamaica, African Americans. So it's definitely a space to define your identity as a Black woman, and for reality checks, right? Having people that have your back. And so definitely in Black Girls Talk, we really push supporting each other and building sisterhood amongst each other. So we go to the next slide. The guest speaker series. So the guest speaker series is fairly new to Black Girls Talk. We started this back in the fall, and we wanted to provide our members with the opportunity to meet and network with Black female professionals who have careers in business, entrepreneurship, finance, STEM, and activism. And I was inspired to create the guest speaker series based off of my own experience with networking events for young women. Back in 2017, 2018, I went to a networking event that was specifically for young women to meet and network with women who work in male-dominated fields or careers. And so when I went, it was definitely an inspiring event. I learned a lot, but there were no Black women there, and there were few Latinx women. And so oftentimes in these networking events for young women, they fail to be inclusive of Black women. And so it was important to me that all of my members were able to see a reflection of themselves through our guest speakers. And so on the right are four of our guest speakers. We've had plenty more, but to the top left is Manola Yeboah. She's a liberation activist. So we got to hear about her experience in leading Black Lives Matter protests and her journey into becoming a Black and Latinx literature teacher. The top right is Beatrice Dixon. She is the founder and CEO of the Honey Pot Company. It's a herbal and natural feminine care line. And then to the bottom left is Tiffany Aliche, AKA the Budgetnista. You've probably seen her on Instagram or on the news. She's actually gonna be at the White House virtually today. She's also known as America's financial advisor. She's always giving, tips on budgeting, saving, investing. And so that just goes along with our initiative to push financial literacy. To the bottom right is Paris McKenzie. She is the owner of Paris Beauty Supplies in Brooklyn and the youngest Black owner of a beauty supply store in America. And so it was very inspiring just hearing her story, being that she was 16 years old when she opened up her beauty supply store. So this is last year. She graduated high school early, and this month she opened up her hair salon as well. So we were definitely inspired by all of our guest speakers and have learned so much from them. And I'm just grateful for just the time that they put into coming and speaking with us. And like I said, I really wanted to just create, an opportunity for my members to see a reflection of themselves through the speakers. So we go to the next slide. Yeah, so I would love for you all to stay connected with me, and also join the guest speaker series. So this Thursday, tomorrow, we are hearing from a transformational speaker, Gwendolyn Miller, and she's giving a workshop on self-worth. All of our uh, speaker series starts at 3:45 and it ends around 5 p.m. And you could sign up through our website, or you can go on Eventbrite, and all of my contact information or Black Girls Talk contact information is on the lab. So I hope to see some new faces at the guest speaker series. And I hope you guys are interested in joining. So I'm so happy that I got to share today. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Wow, Imora, thank you so much. What a gift it is to have you here with us today and to hear all that you're doing and your story. What an inspiration, such powerful work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Lyndon.
All right. Thank you so much again, Kimora. I think it's time to actually have our showcase. It's time to show you what was created in our small groups this past week.
Wow, congratulations, team. Amazing work in our small groups. This is just like a little glimmer, a little window into the magic that are our small groups happening. So it's really awesome to see everybody's work. Thank you for sharing your creativity with us.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. It's always great seeing the work that was created in your groups. And now it's actually time for me to introduce Kat Golaski, TAP's Industry Outreach Advisor.
Hello there, everyone. It is my pleasure to see you all this afternoon and to share this space with each of you. We're delighted to be back this week. And this week, I have the luxury of being joined by the wonderful Hassan Taimur. I had the pleasure of being able to hire Hassan probably about 10 years ago. He was reminding me earlier, back in Savannah, Georgia. He was one of my, fun fact, one of my first hires when I worked at the Mill, a post-production house here in New York City. And I'm just really glad to be able to invite him. He's a very talented senior effects artist, currently freelancing. And yeah, I guess, Hassan, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to share your story as to how you first got into the industry. It's such a pleasure having you here, and we're excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you, Kat, and hello, everyone. Really glad to be here and just to share some insights about my career and what I've been doing for the past 10 years or so. Originally, I was not in the animation industry. I was a software engineer for about 5 years. And then I just kind of wanted to switch up my industry. Because I was always like curious about the graphic arts, specifically visual effects and animation. I just grew up in a family. My dad, made sure as kids that we watched all the movies that he loved, like classics and everything. That a lot of the names that you might not even be aware of. But so we were big into movies, and then come the age of 26, 27, I was always thinking about being in visual effects and animation. And with that said, I moved I went to SCAD in Savannah, Georgia. I was there for about 2 years. And then as I was done, I remember Kat visiting one of the student career fairs in Savannah, Georgia. And I applied to one of the positions there. I was, honestly just hoping for an internship. And a couple of months later, maybe less than 2 months, I believe, Kat, she gave me an offer to be an intern at the mill in New York. So I moved from Savannah, Georgia to the mill in New York, and was a staff artist there for about 4.5 years. And then as of September 2014, I've been freelancing around different studios in the city. I worked a little bit in Chicago. I've also worked a little bit in LA, but mostly my home base here is in New York. And now I'm just, I've been freelance for a while now.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm conscious, I'd love to hear, how was it moving from Savannah, Georgia to New York City?
It was a huge change. Well, my first big change was because I forgot to mention, I was born and raised in Pakistan. So I, grew up there for 25 years of my life. So my big change was moving from Pakistan directly to Savannah, Georgia. That took me a couple of months to settle down, over there. Very different culture and place. But then, I got really comfortable in Savannah. I had a lot of friends. I was enjoying college, was there for 2 years. And, it's quiet. It's a quiet town. The South is pretty quiet, especially a small town like Savannah. But when I moved to New York, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? This is crazy. There's like 1 million people walking in front of me on the streets. Like, no. This is crazy. But, you just, you make friends. Fortunately enough, I had like a lot of wonderful coworkers at the mill and, made so many friendships over there. I just got used to living in New York and, eventually ended up loving it. But yeah, the initial move from Savannah to New York was a little intimidating for sure.
Understandable. Yes, I think we can all relate to a bit of that when we move to the city. I want to get a sense from your end, what does it mean to be an effects artist? You're obviously, that's part of your title. You're a senior effects artist in the industry. What does that role entail? And obviously, we'll go a bit more nitpicky, and I'd love to share your reel, which you've obviously are going to share with us at some point. But would love for you to talk through how that sort of sits within the world of computer graphics.
Yeah, so mostly my work, I started off doing something very different initially when Kat had hired me for the mill. I was really interested in doing crowd replication and crowd simulations, using at that time that the software was kind of like the industry standard. It was called Massive. It was developed by this computer scientist who had developed this particular software for doing all the crowd simulations for Lord of the Rings, essentially. So that I was kind of interested in that, which kind of lies in the effects world. But the term is effects is used kind of rather loosely in the industry. But eventually, after doing that for 4.5 years, I wanted to explore like other kinds of different effects work, producing physical phenomenon. If you've ever been a fan of the '98 movie Twister with Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, I think, yeah. Physical phenomenon like that. So I'm essentially for the industry, I'm not someone who models characters or essentially does not light characters or environments. I'm more based, I create most of the physical phenomenon that's required for whatever, a commercial or like a TV or film. Like I said, we need to create some fire. We need to destroy this building. We need to create a tornado. We need to create a whirlpool, an ocean, things like that. So basically natural phenomenon. That's mostly what I get involved with. And the degree, the work essentially varies across the board in terms of sometimes you are asked just to create something that you've probably seen on in films and everything. Oh, like a monster movie. It's pretty typical to understand what things might be involved. There's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of fire. But occasionally I do get to work on projects that are a little bit more abstract, where the vision essentially is just written on paper, and they don't want something very typical that you might have seen on TV. So my work, yes, it is based on effect simulations, but there's varying degrees of what that could mean, depending on the job I'm working on.
Right. Thank you for sharing. I'd love for you to take this nice opportunity, or this seems like a nice opportunity for us to segue into showing your demo reel, if that works for you.
Sure.
To be able to share with your wonderful participants the wide range of projects that you've worked on more recently.
Absolutely, yes, yes. I did recently update my reel, so I would be happy to share this with you. I'm assuming you guys can all see this screen right here.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play this. All right, and that was
Wonderful.
the
Thank you so
reel.
much for sharing. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful reel, and I really appreciate you sharing it with our wonderful participants. I'm conscious that there are a lot of really familiar projects on this reel, and it's sort of a combination of both commercial work, also episodic or features. I saw my favorite Zoolander being featured as well, the sequel. I wanted to get a sense from your perspective. What's your favorite project that you've added to your reel?
So that's a really difficult one to answer. I mean, I guess most recently, there's this Allstate commercial that's been airing on TV. It's like a moon buggy driving around on the moon, on the surface of the moon, with these two astronauts, and they go over this crater, and because of their safe driving on the moon, they get rewarded with whatever amount of, it says at the end, they get rewarded with something. They're essentially safe drivers on the moon. That was a fun project. It was very challenging. It was time sensitive, but overall, just something very different than what you get asked for, I guess. But there's, like I said, it's difficult to answer because there's so many projects that I've worked on for the past 10 years. But that's my favorite, most recent one, I guess, in last year.
That's great. Yeah, and I imagine it's hard to pick your absolute.
Yeah.
Wanted to get a sense too, you're obviously freelancing and have been for a few years now. Prior to that, you were in a full-time position at the mill where you obviously developed your career. What is the difference between, freelance and working full-time? What do you find now? Like, what does your day-to-day look like at this point right now?
I mean, very different. Obviously, initially making the transition from staff to freelance, was a little scary, of course, because, you're kind of like putting yourself out there in the unknown. Because, as a staff member, you're like, okay, I have job security, I don't have to go anywhere. I can have health insurance and all these other benefits. So jumping into freelance certainly is very, very different. However, the one thing that I really love about freelance work is I get to work for different places. And, I get to pick and choose sometimes, depending on how busy a certain period of the year is. I can decide like, oh, should I work on this project or, this other one?
Mm-hmm.
And, I just get to work with just a wide variety of people, I guess, is what I really love about freelance. Is like, I'm never stuck in like just one location or with like the same set of people. I can I mean, I'll go back to the same place here and there, but you know, it's like, okay, 4 weeks here, 2 months here, 3 weeks here. And so it just gives me an opportunity to move around a lot faster and then jump from like essentially one project to the next. And you know, just kind of, it just gives me an opportunity to work on more, like a wider variety of stuff with like a different set of people, which comes with its own challenges, of course, because you know, if you work for one place has a certain kind of a workflow, another place might be completely operational in a very different way.
Right.
So I kind of enjoy that uncertainty, I guess, in a sense.
So you thrive off it almost.
Yeah, exactly.
And how does that compare to your time working in the full-time capacity?
How does that compare? I mean, you know, full time is just like, I think it was definitely important for me to, I mean, some people, like, you know, end up just starting freelance and continuing on being freelance. I think it was rather important for me to be staff at first and just, you know, just really get more comfortable with, like, not just like, well, with a workplace, but also like, you know, the place of work, the city. Like, you know, just getting used to New York, I was like, okay, I should just stay one place. Like, there were people who would recommend me, oh, you know, you should come out to LA. I'm like, it's only been 2 months I've moved to New York. I want to get to know New York first. And so it went hand in hand with, like, you know, having a staff job. Like, I could just get comfortable with one place, one set of people. I could gain the confidence, essentially. So me being at the mill for like 4.5 years allowed me to just get comfortable with my craft and to be able to develop myself a little bit more. And when I was ready, when I was like ready and more confident, I was able to make the jump over to the freelance world.
Wonderful, thank you. Sorry, my screen froze for a moment and I wanted to come back so you could all obviously see me.
Right.
I'll just decide. What is, you know, I wanted to ask you, you've obviously touched upon briefly speaking to Massive as a software.
Oh, I just lost you there, Kat.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I think my internet is a bit wobbly. Can you hear me?
Yes. I think there's just some like little noise that's happening, but you know, continue on and I'll.
Absolutely, and I'll try to adjust as you answer the question.
Yeah.
But thanks for everyone's patience. These are such interesting times when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
Online. You obviously spoke to Massive as a software. Wanted to get a sense from your perspective, what are some you know, skills needed with which to be the successful and talented artist that you are? What do you recommend for our audience?
So, I mean, I guess I had made the transition, like I was involved in doing crowd simulations using that particular technology, Massive, which still exists to this day.
Right.
Some places still do use it, but you know, nowadays the industry standard for the kind of work that I'm involved in is Houdini, developed by a company out in Canada called Side Effects. So Houdini is the standard software that people use for creating any kind of simulation work, any kind of effect simulation work. It is the absolute industry standard. So yeah, it's basically just, and now, you know, this software is being utilized to do crowd simulation work, which I used to do a while ago. So yeah, it's just important to, like, you know, learn the software. You know, it has a steep learning curve, of course, but the thing is, like, in the past 10 years, you know, there's so much material available online now that I did not have available when I was starting out. You know, there's wonderful forums where people help you out. There's, like I said, there's a lot of free online material on YouTube, on Vimeo, on other platforms. Sometimes artists are selling, or not even selling, they're just sharing their own like work for free so that you'll be able to learn. So it's just really important to keep up with the technology, because technology changes really, really fast. The way that I used to work with this current software 5 years ago is not how I work with it nowadays. It's very different. So, you know, you have to constantly keep yourself updated, because the technology is not going to wait around for you. It's like changing every couple of months. It's really fast. So you have to stay on top of things. But like for people who are wanting to get into this kind of work, I mean, all I can say is there's so much free online material out there for you to just jump into.
Right. Thank you for sharing. I'm conscious that Kareem was just asking whether or not you could speak to green screen and working with a green screen whilst working in post-production. I think that's a really great question, Kareem.
Talking about just talking about green screens in general.
In general, yes.
Well, I do not have much. I will say I do not have much on-set experience. I have been part of. Let me count. I can probably count how many productions I've been on where I was on set. Maybe three. I would say three productions. I mean, it's fun. Like I honestly will say that I love being on set. You know, in the capacity of like a visual effects supervisor or like a visual effects supervisor's assistant. Setting up green screens, of course, absolutely very critical to whatever it is that we need to create. There's, I guess, the most important thing I ever learned was, well, you gotta have your green screen lit evenly. There's always troubles of like a particular production getting like a faulty green screen where there's wrinkles and things. So there's always challenges to be able to light it up evenly, which I've had to go through a few times. And then of course, the thing is, as a visual effects person, if you are on set, it's important you will be setting up tracking markers on those green screens as well. Nowadays, like, the technology is changing a little bit, so you don't have to set up as many tracking markers, or like some green screen come available with enough features that you do not have to set those up. But yeah, I've had my share of fun working with the green screens. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing. I really appreciate also that so many of our wonderful participants are starting to post questions within the chat. So
Okay.
Please kindly continue to send us your questions, because I would like to ensure
so
that
let me
has some...
pull up. Let me see. I can see some questions.
I think Joseph is next, actually.
Okay.
He was wondering if you've ever used graphic design or anything related to that of graphic design.
I'll be honest, I'm not a graphic designer per se. I mean, I know how to use Photoshop, but like, I just know how to use Photoshop for myself. like if someone was to employ me to do texture work, well, nowadays for 3D texture work, people use Substance Painter or like some of these new other softwares. But like old school, back in the day, people were, painting textures in Photoshop. I'm not a Photoshop person. I know how to use a little bit of every software from the Adobe suite. Like, I know a little bit of Photoshop, know a little bit of After Effects, but I'm definitely not a graphic designer. So my experience within that field, in professionally speaking, is zero.
Understandable. Now, I wanted to get a sense from your perspective, what's the largest team you've ever worked with? And then on the other side of the spectrum, I'd love to get a sense of what's the smallest team you've worked with.
Largest team, smallest team. Wow, that's a good question. Let me think. I guess the largest team, I'm literally just wanting to like scroll through my reel right now and be like, oh, what team was the biggest?
Reminisce a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would have to say, like the Zoolander project, I think was a fairly large team. I mean, like consider like, for example, if you were to be on a project working at Industrial Light and Magic or some of these bigger post-production houses like Double Negative or thing, still that the team that I worked with was like fairly small. But there was like up to like 20, 30 people that were on that project. Like that, I wasn't of course having to deal with like a lot of them, but like, they were all on the same shots sometimes. Going from like through all the processes like tracking, animation, lighting, effects, compositing, etc. The smallest team, I would have to say, smallest team. I mean, I've literally been on a project with just like 2 people. Yeah. That just basically meant that we had to do, all of us had more tasks.
Yes, I can imagine there was a lot more pressure then.
Yes, there was a lot more pressure, yes.
Jessica asks, and you're starting to get quite a few wonderful compliments on your reel.
Thank you.
Jessica, sorry, what was that?
I'm saying, thank you for appreciating my work.
Well, it's wonderful work. So Jessica was asking that you mentioned software engineering. So did you do anything with coding? And how was the transition from that? That's a great question, Jessica.
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely great question. When I first got to like the Savannah College of Art and Design, I did not know anything about 3D softwares, or I did not have any skills in Maya or Houdini or anything like that. All I could do was click on a button and, oh, there's a sphere on my screen all of a sudden. Like, people around me were like proper lighters and animators and riggers and all that. My only skill at that time was coding. So I knew code rather well, which is kind of what helped me through college a lot. So, that helped me establish, okay, maybe I should stick towards the more technical side of things just because I have this one skill. I have enough experience for it. And then I kind of like honestly continued utilizing it as I developed my skills in visual effects. And so, as an artist working with Houdini, primarily on effect simulations, I utilize code on a day-to-day basis for like little tasks, little things here and there. So it really did help me being like a software developer. And, I'm not a software developer, but like, I do have the capability if I need to sometimes to write my own little tools that I find useful that I can utilize on different projects. So yeah, coding is still an active part of my day-to-day work for sure.
Wonderful, thank you. Deep was also wondering, what made you choose VFX over software development? What sort of brought you into that?
That's a good question. It's funny, like I'm beginning to get interested back into software development in the past year, to be honest.
I remember you and I had a conversation about that recently.
We did have a conversation about that. Why did I choose visual effects? Honestly, like I'm saying, at the very basic level, I just had such a love for like filmmaking and the process of it. And I just wanted to learn more about it. Not just, being an effects artist, I wanted to learn like, okay, how is camera work done? What is compositing? Like, I'm not a compositor or anything, but I wanted to understand all of like the entire process, starting from script writing to direction, to being on set, to, how color is developed for like a particular project or like a particular look, whether it be a commercial or like a film project or a commercials project. One thing I knew was people who are already in the industry told me that, hey, you being a software developer, the visual effects industry also requires software developers. You have people developing tools for like studios that become part of their proprietary pipeline. And so there was always an opportunity for me to continue doing software development, but in the visual effects industry, just because it kind of just excited me to like switch up careers a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a crossover between both sides. If I want to go back into software development, I can still do that, but still remain in like the visual effects industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, these are such great questions, everyone. And I see we have quite a few more, which is really exciting. So keep adding them. We love hearing from you. Joseph is wondering, do you have time limits when you're working on specific projects, whether it's a commercial or a feature?
Time limits, yes, always. There's always a time limit. Sometimes it's less than you would want, which happens. It varies across the board, of course. Commercials are more like tighter deadlines in the commercials world, whereas film tend to be a little bit more of a longer commitment. Like just even what you saw like with the Zoolander project, that for me was like a long project. Like it was like a 3-month commitment for me to do all the shots that you saw. Sometimes like people who are only involved in film will like work on 1 or 2 things for like a year and a half. So timelines do vary, but yes, there's always a time restriction for sure. Which is, good. You don't always want to be working on one thing forever.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's nice to have that variety, isn't it?
Yeah.
Young was wondering, what advice do you have for, and this is a really great question, for young adults looking to enter the creative industry? Like, what are some obstacles that as a young adult you can expect? And alternately, so here's another great question they've added, what can we do to thrive in the industry? Like, what sets you apart? How can you set yourself apart in what is a very competitive world, as it were?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, like, so I entered the industry rather late in a sense, if I think about it. Like, I was 28 because I was coming from like a different background at that time. But all these participants, you guys are clearly not that old. So you guys have time to enter the industry at a really, really good young age. It's tough. I mean, honestly, the one thing I would say is the way to enter the industry is don't be tunnel visioned, I would say. Yes, you might be like, oh, you know what? I really, really think I want to be an animator, or I really, really want to be a lighter, or I really want to be a producer. I think it's just important to keep yourself open to all aspects of the creative industry, whether it be like a 3D scale or whether it be producing. like I still to this day like am extremely interested in camera work. Like I want to learn about more camera work, like how do DOPs work when they're on set, what kind of lenses they're using, you know, because the only part of that process that I understood being in post-production was when we received all the photography, and then we start our work on those on that particular set of principal photography plates. But before that, I did not have any idea. So I wanted to always explore that, in which, you know, like nowadays, like it kept me open to the point that, you know, I'm like working on my own documentary project that has nothing to do with visual effects, because I want to be able to be what's the word I'm looking for? Be involved in like every particular aspect of what it means to shoot something, whether it's post-production, pre-production, or production. So I think to answer your question, honestly, just keep yourself open. Don't like narrow down to just one thing. Keep exploring. If you're good at one thing, try to jump onto the second thing as well. Maybe later on, a couple of years down the line, you might be like, oh, you know, I'm actually interested in producing. And honestly, with the skill, if you already have the skill level and you have the understanding of the process, you'll be even a better producer because of that reason. So never, I'm just saying never settle.
Yeah, absolutely. Never settle really resonates with me. So I appreciate you sharing that, along with keep exploring.
Yeah.
You know, I find that even at the most senior level of our careers, it's always so important to continue to explore, you know, pursuing these careers such that you're always learning something new.
Right. Absolutely. For sure. Agreed.
Thank you, Hassan. Chrisma was wondering, do you enjoy your job?
Do I enjoy my job? I do. I really do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, you know, with any particular kind of work, at the end of the day, it is work. And sometimes, you know, you can be a little bit stressed out because of time restrictions or other reasons. There's always going to be like that. There's always the stress of work. But no, for the most part, I do enjoy my work a lot because of like the kind of things that I am able to work on. Like, you know, I've been lucky enough to get opportunities to work on some really amazing projects. And, you know, besides that, to be able to work with really some really amazing people. Like I mostly, what I have learned throughout the industry, like to be able to make myself better is only because of the people I work with, not by myself alone. You know, you can always find another great artist who might be more technically sound than you are, who might be way more skilled, but it's like the connection with the people that you're going to make is what's going to take you further.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Angelina was wondering if you ever had any setbacks when you first entered the industry, and if you could maybe kindly speak to that. Like, were there any challenges?
In the industry?
Sorry?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, just like starting a new career was very different for me to be in a post-production facility rather than, you know, what I was used to, like, you know, a software development facility. It was a little intimidating, you know. I am generally an introvert. I'm kind of a shy person. So, you know, it took me a little while to like, you know, get to be like around people, just to like open myself up a little bit more, because, you know, all of a sudden you like start working, you're like, whoa, okay, there's like 50 new faces around me that I have to now work with every day. So, you know, it was important for me. I mean, of course, every day I was going to be learning like all these new skills and everything. That's just like, you know, everyone can get through that. But the difficulty that I probably had was like, okay, how can I be part of a team effectively? Which meant that I had to, you know, make some changes within myself, be more interactive with the team, because, you know, I was like such a quiet person always to begin with. So, you know, I had to go through some of those changes. But other than that, you know, the only difficulty you're going to face is like, you know, you might sometimes feel a little bit overwhelmed with like the work, or like your team is expecting you to do to work on a certain kind of a task that you might not be important with. The one good thing I learned about that was to get over those hurdles is I would always ask questions. I was never shy about asking questions that, hey, I'm having some trouble with this. Can you help me out? Instead of just sitting there and being stressed out and freaking out, like, no, ask the question right now, and, you know, and then you're on your way.
Right. And I think that's very well said. I think, you know, so many of us often feel that asking a question is quite silly, or we're worried about the silly nature of the question, but really, in reality, asking questions is really the way forward in terms of how you work with your teammates, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
There is a question that both Arkingel and Alensky are both asking, which is, has there ever been a time when you wanted to give up, and how did you overcome it? And then Alensky's part of the question was such that, what is your motivation to keep it up?
Okay, so so second question is about motivation?
Yes, and
How to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah, what motivates you? And Arkingel was wondering, what, have you ever wanted to just give, as it were?
To like throw in the towel?
Yes, throw in the towel, as they say.
I'll be honest, sure, I have gone through that. I have gone through that kind of situation a couple of times where, you're just overwhelmed. Maybe the expectations of the project are, out of bounds. They're like, maybe they're asking too much of you. And maybe it's not, and the thing is, at the end of the day, sometimes it's no one's fault, essentially. I have gone through those phases where it's like, okay, this is too much. I can't take this anymore. I need to change this, or like after this project, I'm going to take a 3-month-long vacation or something. It happens. You just have to, but the thing is, it's too easy to do that. The thing is, at the end of the day, for you to be considered an effective artist and an artist that will always get hired is that you never give up. If there's always a problem, you bring it up to your colleagues, you raise concerns to your senior or to your colleagues or whoever it might be. I've had situations where, yes, me and one of my other coworkers, we were like not doing well. Like, we were suffering because of the project deadline, because of the amount of work. But, we were like, hey, what are we gonna achieve out of this by feeling this way? Nothing. So let's just calm down. The important thing is to overcome a hurdle like that. When you think you want to give up, take a step back, go for a walk, breathe, do some meditation. Like I occasionally now like do meditation, especially during the time of this pandemic. Everyone's gone through like these varying degrees of emotions. So I've learned to get into meditation like on a regular basis. And whatever problem you might be having, no matter how stressful of a project you're working on, there's always a resolution, and that resolution only comes from you.
Right. That's very nicely said. I'm equally a big proponent of meditation, as you know, and I think it's very, very helpful, particularly during these very uncertain times, as it were. I think it's
Right.
a lot more optimistic than we were a year ago, but I think it's important to keep that as a routine whenever possible.
Right. Absolutely.
Wanted to ask you as well. So Vero was wondering if you do photography as a hobby. And this touches upon, having external outlets outside of work, having hobbies. And so, yeah, they were asking.
I agree. Yes. I am big into photography. I honestly do love photography enough that I wish that was my day job. But, you don't always get what you want. No, you can though, it depends. But no, yes, I absolutely love photography. I'm, like I said, that I wanted to learn more about camera work when I started being in visual effects, just because I wanted to understand all the different aspects of production, like starting from principal photography. So that got me into like cameras. I have like a few DSLRs that I play around with. Like I'm trying to get more into shooting portraitures. I mostly enjoy shooting landscapes a lot, but because of my interest in photography, that led me to getting myself into documentary filmmaking as well. So yeah, I think anyone who can get themselves into photography, it's amazing, and it's so tied in with. Yeah, some feedback issue. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's another medium, and it's always important to. It's important to be involved in different things outside of work. Like you don't want to be sitting in front of a computer all the time. Go out, grab your camera, just disappear into the woods for a couple of hours, or like go upstairs wherever you might be living. It's always important to go out and explore something else besides work. Oh, Kat, I think you're muted.
Yes, I was trying to fix my sound. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everyone bearing with my technology issues today. Thanks so much for everyone's patience. Anissa was wondering, what's the best part about your job?
was the best part about my job? Honestly, like I think I sort of might have talked about that earlier. It's really just the people that I work with. Like, it's the team, because it's such a the craft of visual effects. Like it's such a huge collaboration. You're just like one part of it. Sometimes your contribution might be in terms of like other people who might be working on it, but it does not matter. It's the team that you work with that's basically what brings me more pleasure than anything else. Oh, muted again, Kat.
I was wondering, you've mentioned about, you've touched upon this a couple of times. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just this little ringing noise that this noisy bit that's coming through. Sorry about that.
No worries. I had to turn off my video just to be safe and just to conserve.
Yeah, sure.
But you've touched upon your documentary several times throughout our conversation. Could you perhaps expand upon it? Angelina was wondering if you could speak to it.
Well, honestly, this is a project that I started. It's a passion project of mine. To be honest, it's still ongoing and probably will be ongoing for like quite some time, just because you're involved in regular day work and other commitments, so you don't always get time. You have to make time for like these kinds of passion projects. But I believe I started this project in 2015. It's been almost 6 years actually already. Almost 6 years, but that's the time when I was starting to explore a subject that really interested me. Me being from where I am from in Pakistan, like I'm really interested in tribal culture, specifically in the north. And so there's this one tribe that I wanted to explore. It's basically this pagan culture that exists in the northwestern side of the country. And so, I just one time decided to just go there and visit that culture and the people. And then, I made some good connections there, got to know the people, and that just got me a little bit more interested and motivated to come back and actually shoot something. And then 2 years later, I went down and I shot something. Now, that was really difficult for me, of course, because I'm not a videographer. I'm not a camera person. I love to shoot stills, but that's about it, just for like whatever I like to shoot. But like, shooting a documentary is like a completely different kind of a skill set. But the good thing it did for me was like I got to learn about, again, speaking about the process, all these different nuts and bolts that are involved to be able to create, like, whether it's a film commercial or like a documentary. It just kind of kept me going. I'm like, okay, so I came back, I have 5 hours of footage. Let's go through this. Oh, these are the bits I like. These are the bits I don't like. Why do I not like this bit? Maybe I shot it wrong, And then just learning about like sound work a little bit more, learning about editing more, learning about color, and all the other things that I generally speaking don't get to work on. So yeah, that's kind of like my ongoing project at this point in time. Little by little, I'll probably get it done. But yeah, it's just important to be able to explore your passion projects while still focusing on your skill set, within your respective industries.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's very, very nicely said. Gloria was wondering, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh my God, that's a question I ask myself all the time.
Don't we all? I mean, I know
I've been asking that question since I started in this industry. What am I going to be doing after 5 years? What am I going to be doing after 10 years? I don't know. Well, this question always, it's ever changing. I guess, and Kat, you are right that we all think about this all the time. Yes. In 5 years, that's, I guess I would have to say, I'm hoping and keeping my fingers crossed, I at some point in time in my life would like to be an entrepreneur of some sort.
Right.
And what that could mean, whether it's within the visual effects and animation industry or something else, I'm not sure of that. That is to be determined. And that is basically my journey right now, is to see what I would be doing in the next, 5 to 10 years. But no, really good question. But yeah, some sort of entrepreneurship of some sort in the future is something that I would love to like run my own some sort of company, little setup, anything, but depends on what that company is going to be.
Right. No, that sounds really exciting, and I think that's a really great plan. it sounds like a lot of folks wanted to hear what your future plans were and what your goals were.
Right.
Adding to this, so I have a couple more questions for you, Hassan. I hope that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So both Theodore and Aisatu were both asking, how have you ever had an obstacle that you've had to deal with, in the culture or within the studio of a company that you're working for? Is there an example that might come to mind? And if so, how did you manage that obstacle or that situation? Whether it was an uncomfortable conversation or if it was, you're just, completely overworked on some projects, which I know happens quite a bit in the industry. Would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a few occasions, I mean, that happens. There's, it's just but human nature that we're never happy in whatever or wherever we're working. But of course, if something actually really something is happening that's rather uncomfortable, how to deal with it. One thing I will have to say is anytime if I've ever faced any kind of problem that I myself have not been able to resolve, because thankfully enough, I had a good relationship with my peers, I would just bring it up to my seniors, my manager, whether it's my recruiting manager or whether it's my team lead or the producer on my job. The one thing I will say is, as shy as I am and as introverted as I am, that's one thing that I never shied away from. I was I'm having this problem and I really don't know how to solve it. And it's only fair that I reach out to my fellow colleagues and or whoever's in charge of the particular situation at this point in time. So yeah, things will happen, things that you're not gonna like, you're not gonna enjoy, but it's just important to reach out to the right people and make yourself heard. Never ever cower away, and just let yourself be heard in the appropriate manner.
I really appreciate you saying that, and for also speaking to the fact that you do feel quite introverted or quite shy. I'm conscious that it's really important to understand that in the industry, the industry is made up of several different personalities. Not everyone is going to be the loudest person in the room. Not everyone's going to be the quietest person in the room. And it's about how that dynamic exists. So thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm getting a lot of compliments I'm seeing here, and a lot of folks who are really appreciative of your advice. You've touched upon meditation as something to focus on or to deal with during these uncertain times. We are experiencing still very much a collective feeling of uncertainty. And I kind of want to get a sense from your perspective, outside of meditation, what are some recommendations you can offer our wonderful audience members or as coping strategies during these times? What are some outlets that you respond to quite well?
Right. Yeah. So I had mentioned meditation earlier. This is something that I'm not as regular, honestly, as I would like to be. But I got into meditation more, probably you could say towards either summer or towards the end of 2019. I started exploring meditation a little bit more, not as regular, like I said, as I wanted to be. But it would, the thing I learned about its effectiveness was that my commitment essentially only had to be for 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's about it. When I started my day before going into work, you're heading towards a subway. There's a million people on the subway that particular morning. And, you have to cram yourself into the little corner in the subway and you're just squished around people. This is pre-pandemic times, of course. So, it sounds weird, but yeah, all I would do is I would just have this one simple app that I use that, I would highly recommend. It's called Simple Habit, that I use regularly, just to do a 5 to 6 minute meditation, just, have your headphones on. And anytime I did that, my days were so much more better. I was more prepared to understand my environment a little bit better and not be able to respond to it the same way that I usually would. And days when I did not meditate, I would notice a difference in the way my day went. Even if the day was not stressful, but maybe I was responding to my environment a little bit differently. I was maybe feeling a little bit more annoyed at the person sitting across from me,
right?
Because he or she maybe is doing something that's annoying. But anytime I meditated, it was very different. And especially during these times, it's become even more important to engage yourself and listen to yourself and to be able to understand why you're going through all these crazy emotions that you are. So, I would only recommend meditation that, just make it a part of your lives, like daily basis. Just 5 to 10 minutes is all you want. There's another app called Headspace that people are using. I am used to Simple Habit, but essentially they serve the same purpose. And, while you're doing that, it's important during these times, because we're constrained to our homes a lot, that, or confined rather, that you give yourself tasks. Like if you say, do not have a project that you're currently working on, make one for yourself. Think about what excites you. Think about what is the thing that you've been meaning to do for the past 3 years that you keep putting off. Start doing it today, little by little. And you're going to notice how your days are going to go so much more differently. And of course, if you can add throw in some exercise in there, which I was always really bad at, like going to the gym or anything like that. And especially nowadays, you can't go to the gym. The one recent thing I started doing was before starting work, I have like a little workout routine. And, when you get your blood pumping that way and your blood flowing, your days are so much more better. You just have more energy and I'm more focused. I can handle my problems better. I'm throwing like a technical challenge my way. I'm able to be more focused. So yeah, all these kind of things essentially go hand in hand together. But yeah, just always give yourself a little bit of time as well. Self-care is so important.
Self-care is definitely very, very important. I appreciate your saying that. The meditation apps, for some of you who were asking, were that of Simple Habit. There's also Headspace. There are also some free resources online on YouTube for meditation that you can access. That alongside with exercise and also giving yourself tasks. I do that a lot for myself,
Right.
Giving myself tasks to projects that I work on. And then you sort of look at them at the end of each day and you feel like you're making some momentum or making some strides, as it were.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. Totally.
So thank you. Kareem was wondering if you've ever worked on a Marvel movie.
I have not. I have not worked on a Marvel movie, no.
Is that perhaps
Maybe
a goal of
someday.
yours?
Sorry?
Is that perhaps a goal of yours in the future?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, yes, I'm not big on Marvel movies, to be honest.
Awesome.
No, blasphemy. No, I enjoy them. Like I haven't watched all of them, if that's the thing. I mean, I love watching them for all the visual effects work and everything, because they all look amazing and everything. But that is not a personal goal of mine, which is okay, I think.
It's definitely okay. I mean, Kareem, I must say that it would be a personal goal of mine. It's a good thing that you can not see the expression on my face at the moment. I'm teasing completely, but that's why we all have different interests and different goals. That's just a reality for us all.
Right.
So totally, I appreciate your sharing. Adding to this, I guess one last question from our perspective is sort of, what's some, final words of advice that you can share with our group and, for getting into the industry, setting yourself apart. We touched upon this slightly at the beginning of our conversation, but what are some additional thoughts you might have, to get into the industry and to ensure that you're current, you're staying competitive?
Yeah, right. No, good question. I mean, obviously the visual effects industry is so technologically driven, especially if you want to be an artist. One really important thing is you always want to keep up with the technology. Just because you know one thing really well doesn't mean it's going to change. It's going to change always. So I constantly have to still read up on new things that are coming out, because I'll end up say in a new environment with a new set of people. And if they ask me a question that, did you see this new update that was released? And if I'm like, no, I don't know, that's not really going to go well for me. So it's important as artists to stay in touch with whatever updates are being made to technology, because it's ever changing. It's changing so fast. Really important. Second of all, the one thing besides your technical skill, of course, which I was saying, if you put in the time and the effort, of course you're going to be good and great, and you're going to be amazing. But the one skill that I would say is absolutely invaluable is how you're going to engage with people. That's what really will set you apart. And that's what a lot of times, that's what recruiters are looking for, is the people's person, the person who's going to be part of a team. And for you to be able to do that, you need to have the necessary people skills. It's also very important as you're trying to enter this industry is to network with the right kind of people, or like just generally speaking, any opportunities that you have to network with a set of professionals. You know, let's hope this pandemic is over soon and we're able to like actually see each other, you know, in some of these networking settings. But, you know, networking is absolutely essential. You might be very, very good at your skill, but it's important for you to get yourself out there and to get to know people. If you do that, you know, instead of like, say, a recruiter just looking at an email, if you show up in person, they're just going to remember you more. So I think these two things, just keeping up with technology and being able to create those people skills is really going to help you. And third and lastly, if you are entering this industry, like I said, that you have to keep yourself current in terms of technology. Also, you have to keep yourself current in terms of just like art in general. It's just important to allow yourself to expand as an artist and not just be like one thing. I mean, I understand that right now I am mostly focused on creating effect simulations, but I don't want to keep myself just doing that. I want to expand a little bit more. That's why like I've been trying to learn more camera work. That's why I'm kind of trying to explore documentary filmmaking. And, you know, I will continue to look into other things that interest me. So, you know, just explore artists. If you're living in New York, check out some galleries and bring that passion with you to your work and your industry. And believe me, if you do all those three things, like I mentioned earlier, that will set you apart and you will be set up for more success in your career.
Yeah, those are wonderful words of wisdom, Hassan. I really appreciate you sharing with that. You know, stay interested, be overly communicative, make strong connections with people, and that's really going to help enhance your career. So these are very strong ideas that really resonate, I think, with so many of us here in the space. So, well, listen, thank you to both you and our participants for bearing with my rather tragic technology issues, but we got through there in the end. It's been really incredible having you here, Hassan. As I said to you several times throughout this conversation, there have been a lot of compliments about your advice and a lot of appreciation towards what you've shared within this space, within the Zoom room. So thank you for taking this time, and we hope to stay in touch with you all.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for having me over. I had a lot of fun, and thank you for attending, and thank you for all your questions. I really enjoyed answering. I hope I answered them to the best of my ability, but thank you for having me over.
You certainly did, and we really appreciate it. So we will absolutely want to stay in touch and have you come back in the near future.
Well,
so
thank you so much.
All right. Well, I will pass it on to our wonderful Lisa and Lyndon.
Wow, thank you so much, Hassan. Wow, what an incredible journey. And I love those words, keep exploring. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Hassan.
You're welcome.
All right, so it's just about that time, right, Lyndon? Here we are heading into our closing ritual. So in our small groups this week so far, we've been talking about characters and character design. So for our closing ritual, we're going to invite you to think of one of your very own superpower qualities, such as determination, your creativeness, your humor, or thinking on your toes. And we want you to be thinking about what your superpower quality is. And you're going to move into a power pose that represents your power. All right, Lyndon, you ready? We're going to model and do this along with the rest of our crew here. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Nice power pose, Lyndon. All right. Shake out your power poses at home. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to pass this to you, Lyndon.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of today's mega group. Please remember to stay connected by checking out our website as well as following us on social media. And again, thank you for joining the Made in New York Animation Project mega group. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a great Wednesday evening.
Thank you.